Hello, welcome to the live stream, ladies and gentlemen. It is time for welcome to the live stream, ladies and gentlemen. It is time for welcome to the live stream, ladies and gentlemen. It is somehow my volume got unmuted. I get to hear myself twice. Cool. Nothing but high production value here. That's what we're going for. Game industry discussions, your Steam page, post-launch and beyond. I'm joined by a tiny disaster, Cupogoodness. I'm your host, Bumpy McSquigums. High production value. Hello, folks. How are you on this day?
Professional.
Hang it in there.
Oh, settings always change. That's fine. So, we got some stuff to talk about today. So this is what, part 3 of our Steam store page optimization, I would guess? Sort of?
Yeah, I think we've done 2 prior ones, and the last one was focused on, I think, the pre-launch leading into launch.
And last one we called from Steamworks to launch, and the first one was just like a general optimization because we didn't know yet that we were going to do 3. So
Kelly's kind of like our librarian. We're like, what do we talk about?
What happened?
Can you go through the books here? Yes. And this one's more about talking about after your game has launched. That's what we're going to focus on today. Is the areas of Steam that not as if you would abandon the other areas that we've talked about to this point in your post-launch, but these are the areas that you would focus on specifically during this phase of your game.
Interesting. All right, well, you guys are going to have to start off because for some reason, Tiny Disaster's camera is just frozen. And I don't know why on my OBS, not on the call. So I get to fix that while we're going. So
okay.
Everybody
and then at some point we'll
side-faced Tiny Disaster here while we're while I'm playing.
Okay, we have gone live. Cool. I just want to make sure that people could see my winter professional wear on display today. So good to go. And vanity aside, we will jump right in. We'll talk about Steam user reviews, which is, I think, it's a little bit different than the rest of the topics we're going to be talking about, which are more focused on the actual Steamworks side. Steam user reviews are the only topic I think we're touching on today that are not on the Steam backend, so to speak. But they are important, and they are something that I think are important enough to start the stream off with talking about. And that is because they can make a huge difference to you in terms of, the algorithm, how Steam judges how well your game is performing. There's also a lot of perception value that comes with your user reviews in terms of when new people come in and they see new potential buyers come in and see the all reviews at the top right of your page. You get kind of a judgment right off the bat from that. As well, it's important to know that business partners, potential suitors, publishers, people that are willing to pay you money to have your game participate in some of their promotions, these kind of numbers can work well in those negotiations as well. So there's a few things to think about when you're. Obviously, we're not in control. If as the developer or the company working on the game, we're not in control of, or we're not in direct control of how the user reviews go. But there are ways to kind of influence how that's going to go. Obviously, A1 is have a quality product. That is the thing that you have to have right off the bat. If you don't have a quality product, if people can find holes in your product in various ways that they found holes in other Steam products, and this is why if you don't know what a quality product is, if you want to see the difference, you might want to just do some research on Steam and see what's getting positive reviews, very positive, what's getting the 95 to 100% versus what's getting the 85 to 90 versus what's getting mixed under 70, etc., etc. And that will give you a good idea really quickly in terms of, not really quickly, but within a day or two, if you do this exercise, you will see patterns and trends and things that the users at large will sort of react to either positively or negatively. So that said, there are still a lot of subjective things, right? In terms of your game, your genre might be something that is working against you right off of the bat, and that's not necessarily me saying that you can't release certain games on Steam because of the genre, but rather that you have to kind of just be aware that there might be a detriment to releasing a game, maybe not even a genre, but I've noticed that PC users over the last few years have griped a lot about some of the mobile games that have moved over to PC, and or some of the developers that have essentially been called out for using mobile graphics. And this is kind of true for PC, and it's where it usually sits. But this is also true for like consoles, like especially the PlayStation 4. And if you think about the PlayStation 5 specifically, there's a lot of users that for the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 base that aren't really looking for low graphic experiences. So if you have a 2D game and you're putting it on a PlayStation, it's not that you can't sell it on there. It's just that there is some detriment to doing that because of the situation at hand. So it's just kind of having those things in mind, being aware of that situation, very important. Can I take a breath? Do you have anything to add, Tiny Disaster, while I jump in here for a second?
Oh boy, it's all of this stuff around reviews. It's tricky because it's the thing you have the least control over.
Right.
And of the things we're going to be talking about today, and in a way, of course, you do in designing your game and making the best game you can, but it's the kind of thing where it can go so far south without you being able to just redirect the ship as quickly as you can with just like changing some sort of optimization or like.
Well, that's a great point. Something to talk about, a great discussion point is what happens if it's starting to go a direction, obviously negatively, that you're not anticipating or hoping that it'll go, and what reactions and what actions you can take, and that will work to your benefit. So I'm trying to think of certain examples of this. Nothing comes to mind right off the top of my head. I know that there have been, negatives into recoveries. Obviously, I'm sure No Man's Sky has seen something like that. I think they're back actually up pretty high. I'm checking just to not just talk. Yeah, see, very positive. Recent reviews,
in particular,
71%. Yep.
Just that Steam gives you that opportunity to see like a game's overall reviews and the recent reviews, which makes such a big difference. And I don't know anyone else who really does a review system like that gives you a bit of a chance to recover.
Yeah, it's interesting because there are some negative effects to that we've seen when the game isn't necessarily a service or a game that continues to get updates. Sometimes the recent reviews can be lower percentage overall compared to the overall reviews, in sort of a kind of like not an ironic twist, but in like a just sort of working backwards, where they're like, well, the dev hasn't really addressed this one thing that I would like to see addressed, even if the developer doesn't necessarily need to address that kind of thing or wasn't expected to. So it is interesting how that works. In general, that's not going to work to your detriment more than it's going to work to the benefit of games that are trying to pace themselves back into the good graces of like Steam users and trying to get back up into the 70 to 80% or higher range, which a lot of people can go into. So
one of the things that Steam does too is it actually does cycle, even with the the recent reviews and then the overall, it gives you that as up here at the top, like mostly positive and then recent. But even the ones that it shows, it does most helpful reviews in the past 30 days. So you don't just have somebody who posted the first day and it got 1 million likes or whatever is there permanently forever, scathing and tearing your game apart. So they do cycle in things that are relevant in the the past month. So you do have a chance to fix that. So
right.
They definitely understand their audience as far as the devs go and what people perceive as good or bad.
Right. Critically, people can change their reviews. If they post a negative review and you've worked hard to sort of on the points that they've made, a developer can respond to that review. A user can see that response and then make up their mind in terms of whether or not they would like to take any additional action. Now, is that going to happen every time? No, of course not. But it is nice to have that sort of have the option, right, to say, okay, I've taken in your feedback, and we've tried to respond to it as best we can. And it would be cool if you would check out the game again and consider a reassessment. That kind of thing is completely fine and actually fair play for Steam developers and Steam users to kind of have that interaction. Which, again, as Tiny Disaster points out, that doesn't really exist on any other platform. certainly not on consoles or like mobile, unless you're going to an actual developer's Twitter or something like account, like, which is not necessarily what we're talking about here.
I'm not even been thinking of it broader of like any review system for any media. There's not a lot of systems that give you a chance to like go at it again or let more recent users, viewers, readers, whatever, have a say that isn't just like changing an average of 1,000 reviews already.
And I think that's because I think it's an antiquated system that doesn't understand how products can now iterate on themselves, and they don't necessarily have to be a new product every time they iterate. They can be the same product that's just improved. It doesn't have to have a new shiny store page or new shiny, this is the second version, blah, blah, blah 2, blah, blah, blah 3, that kind of stuff. It doesn't have to be that. It can. It's just you don't have to do that anymore. You can put that back into the original product, especially when it is a digital product, and improve it from there. So the user reviews, like just to wrap up what we were talking about before, you can absolutely rally if you're responsive, active, and making sure that you are projecting the right, announcements, and we talked about the Steam announcements and the event posts and things of that sort before. You want to make sure you're very active on that and addressing a lot of what the complaints are coming in, and making sure that you're not sounding flippant about it or defensive or anything that would come off to the users as like sort of arrogant or I don't need to listen to you kind of thing. That's just not a good look to have. Generally, a collaborative approach is always going to be really welcomed by users. And you may say, well, some of my users are complete jerks, and absolutely. I just think that when you go about dealing with some folks that may come off as jerks, they may have become a jerk because of their interactions with their products and the people behind them in the past. And so a lot of times we'll see like someone come in very not, I would say, rude, not kind, not using good language, and not really like looking to spare anyone's feelings. And then when they get a human response back, and it's clearly someone who's read the feedback even through all their vitriol and stuff, and said, hey, we're going to look into this and such, and we appreciate it. It's like 8 out of 10 people will flip at that point and be like, oh my God, there's someone on the other end. I feel so bad because I'm just so used to people not responding to my when I have a complaint or I have an issue. And so that a lot of times will work, just having good customer service. And then if that doesn't work, then I've always said that if there's a community, if this is like a community management tactic, you just don't want to be the unreasonable person in the room. So if there's a negative review and you try to and you say, I don't think that's really reasonable, and you try to have that back and forth with the user, and it's clear that they're just not willing to just not get on the same page with you, not have that conversation with you, just there to troll, etc. You gotta leave it. There's nothing you can do about that.
Just really don't like your game. But sometimes that's just gonna be it.
Yeah, that's fair, and that's fair, right? If they subjectively want to do it, you also come off as like whiny if they're calm, right, and they're the logical person saying, I just didn't like the game. I don't think I have to say anything else about that. And you come back and you're like, you should fix your review. Then obviously, this is the community management thing I keep coming back to. Whoever is the most reasonable person is going to look the best in the situation, and that should always be the developer. Like that should always, or the community manager, or whoever's in control of the response from the developer side. Is that if they're going to be unreasonable the whole time, that's going to come out in the wash. The rest of the community is going to see that, and you're not going to take a negative hit because you engaged as long as you could within reason before you're like, you know what, this is just a thing where we have to move on and not deal with it. And we'll talk about that a little bit later with the community stuff, but that's also something that happens on the user review front. So just to wrap up on the user reviews from my end, negatives come in. They don't take it as a dagger every time you do get a negative review. Bumpy and I have discussed in the past, and I believe Tiny Disaster has been in this discussion before, where they don't need to necessarily hate your game or actually even rate it negatively in their mind to give you a negative review. They can actually have like a single gripe with the game, and if it is like a thorn in the paw type gripe, then they will give you a negative review despite 90% of the game really clicking with them, which is disappointing, but it's also something that you need to understand that that's a fact and that that's going to occur at times.
So thinking about this from the publishing perspective, this is one of the few areas where how publishing looks at reviews and games seems to be pretty different, because like in the publishing world, it's very much don't interact with reviews, especially because like in books, you can't change anything. Reviews are not for you, they are for the readers. So if it's something like just posting on a website or something, it's always going to look bad on the author to go in and say anything other than maybe thank you, but it really is best just to not touch it. So having like your perspective of the, be the most reasonable person, come at it as long as you can without it being just redundant and you're not going to get anywhere, which like if there's something you can do and actually be helpful and help them through it, that's interesting. But you also wonder the public perception of that. I guess it depends on where this feedback's being posted, where you're interacting, if it's in your community versus a public facing platform.
Right.
So
right, a lot of this will be like what we're talking about now within like Steam itself. So the Steam user reviews, where we're talking about that the replies and all that will be actually within the review itself. The like on their page or whatever, if you open it up or say additional comments or see the developer's response. For like and just in general, you're talking about like Steam threads. So again, you have potentially new users or people who are considering, I'm going to maybe buy your game. I'm going to see what's going on in the community hub. Okay, there's some conversation. The developer's active. That's great. Oh, there was a gripe here. And they maybe, this isn't like every person, of course, but one person who might be considering buying your game may be won or lost by just them reading out that conversation and seeing how you handled it. It is better to me as an indie game developer to respond, period, than to not respond, unless it's so clear that it's just a pointless role or something that you just don't want to get involved in to begin with. It makes no sense to. But if they actually there's a legitimate, they're putting that out there for a reason, right? And so that's how you kind of think about it. They're not putting that out there just so that it sits out there and floats and nobody responds to it. They're putting, especially when it's like on your game's community board. So that's kind of how that's how I think about the response to that, as a game developer, is that it's like, we want to make sure that that we are reading what you're saying and that, we actually are taking it to heart and possibly reacting or responding to it if it makes sense to us to do so. So I think that's more important. They are so used to just having no one respond to them, get the door slammed on them, etc. This is not, to me, a recipe for a good community. You're trying to, these people are part of your community by virtue of them making this post in the first place. So they have now committed themselves to being part of your kind of games community at that point, whether you or they like it or not. At that point, we're both locked into that same circle. So something to think about there. Wrap up on the user reviews. I had a couple of just where are my notes? Notes.
Okay, so we will get to your question here in a second. M010001. But thing I wanted to mention, something that has kind of annoyed / bothered me throughout the whole Steam user review, because I don't know when they started doing it. I want to say the last few years, but they started basically not counting people, and they expect you to disclose whether you got the game from the developer or something, and they don't count people who do, which I think is just ridiculous and ludicrous. Now, if they want to make a separate section for basically, it's, we're not exactly press, but we're kind of press, content creators, in some capacity. So, they have their Metacritic review thing up there. They have, users are able to post, but there's very little incentive for, me, for instance, to go and be like, hey, I played this game. I had a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. And then, you put the received product for free. Oh, of course they're going to say that. They just discount it immediately, like you're, what do they call it, shilling for the company. And I would hope that rarely happens, but I assume it probably does, because people want to stay in good graces. But I've never dealt with any company that said, only say nice things. If you say bad things, we're going to be mad at you. I've never run into that.
Right. So. First of all, it's a very interesting point, because that's a great thing to think about. I hadn't really even thought about that perspective or that point about how when you send out keys to content creators, they use those keys, and if they want to leave a user review, they can, but it will not count towards your percentage score, and it will still appear at the bottom, ranked as however it would normally be ranked among the reviews. Now, the incentive here is that if you review it early, or if you review it on launch day, you'll probably want to be one of the first few reviews. And as a content creator, you'll probably get a little bit of additional visibility from that. But like you said, it might be like people being like, this guy's just shilling for it. I don't think that everybody thinks that. No. I think that that's definitely like a perspective that people have for sure. And then the other thing to note is that this is a case where a few rotten apples ruined the bushel or whatever. I don't even know what I'm talking about. But the whole point is that people would send out codes to a bunch of friends to get them to review to influence the number. That would happen. That would happen immediately, and people would then Steam would have to have Steam. Valve is basically preemptively striking that down because it knows how people work and how at least a certain amount of developers like to work and game the system. And that's something that would happen, that developers would look to take advantage of immediately.
They sort of try to combat that with a Steam curator, and then you can tie it to your reviews, but...
Right. I would like to see maybe either like your solution was maybe a different section, a content creator review percentage, which makes a lot of sense to me, although maybe that fills up the page too much. Or if you had the ability to... like punish. I think punishing is the best thing that can happen sometimes. To like a cautionary tale, right? Of like, okay, if you try this, Valve will bring the hammer down on you and stuff. So if you allowed what you're saying, Bumpy, and said, okay, the free codes now can count towards the total review score, then it would be up to someone on the Valve side to detect when that was being gamed, and then hammer the developer
you could probably have to tie, if you want to be a content creator recognized by Valve, tie it to your YouTube account or your Twitch account, and then they see it's legitimized, they approve it, and then boom, you're in that separate column. And there's a lot of negative space on the store page if you look left and right. I'm using maybe 40%.
No, I totally agree that if they made it so that you had to at least legitimize your code through your account and your channel that is active or has to be, hit a certain threshold or whatever, like to count it, then yeah, that would totally make sense to me. I don't know how hard that is to implement. I imagine it's not that hard if they would spend some time to build it, but it's a thing that they'd have to invest in.
If you want to post I'm not signed in right now. If you want to post like videos and stuff from a YouTube, you actually have to tie your YouTube account in there, and then you can post and say, hey, I put this up, and you can do that every time on different store pages and like the community tabs and stuff.
Yeah. So it's obvious that
their
technology exists, right? And of course it does. It's just whether or not it wants to be implemented.
I want to dive over to M010001's question here. Do you think a game's website is important? It feels like they've been replaced by Steam community forums, Reddit, and Twitter. I personally do not like trying to find a game developer or a game's website and it not existing or it looping back to Twitter or a community page or even the Steam store page. I want them to have a separate website that's got like the about, it's got, here's the game, here's all the other stuff that we worked on. I want that personally. So I know as a content creator, I look for that, and I really do not like not being able to find it.
I agree with both of you. I think that the bare minimum you need is a splash page with links.
Yeah.
A splash page with links that includes, the things that people are looking for, like a content creator or a potential customer, which is links to press kit, media kit, as you mentioned, Bumpy, as well as like buy button stuff if you have it, widgets on the page, and or just links right to the store page.
Yeah. You can have a buy button that circles back to the store page. Absolutely. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
A lot of the games that don't do them anymore and just use Discord and whatever are forgetting that the kind of player they are isn't the average player who's going to get on the Discord and just use Twitter and like want to interact with their media that way. Of like most people are just picking up the game, and if they want more information, Googling it. Like they're the type of player they interact with the most, or the type that are interacting and hardcore into the
Right.
world of games and know where those communities would be, but that's not the average person.
No.
So people forget that the kind of player they are not the kind of player they're necessarily trying to attract.
Yeah, and you have to fight your echo chambers when you're in them. Like you said, with the community management or with the community, it can seem like, okay, this is where all of my players exist, and it's just not true. Most of them are not in speaking up, having conversations. They're just enjoying your game, and that's it. It doesn't mean they're removed from your community.
Even looking at the percentage of people that buy your game versus review your game on Steam, most people are just playing their game.
Right.
So,
yeah, no. The obviously, if you looked at if we had some numbers of purchases versus or owners versus those total reviews, it would be a stark difference in most cases. So hope that answers the question on the website. Yes, certainly, but it doesn't have to be anything like overdone or super intricate. Just make sure that you have the the minimum fundamental stuff that people are looking for. Usually, your socials, media kit. If you want to go, ham and make your website something special, you certainly can. That could be part of your PR marketing plan stuff, but it's not necessary. It's just something that might fit what kind of game you have. I've seen some amazing splash pages and websites for various different kinds of games, Metroidvanias, things that really shine, and you want to show the art off right away. Then a website might make sense for that as well, and especially if it's like an interactive or kind of animated kind of thing as you scroll through it. Some of the websites can be truly works of art. But again, not necessary if you just want to keep it to the bare minimum and push people to your store page, your Discord, your Twitter, etc.
Yeah, and you can find so many templates to do it in a way that isn't time-consuming. Just get the information up there. You never have to think about it again, but have it.
There are so many apps and programs now that are clean, that will give you clean site link, like Linktree or that kind of stuff. Like literally look up like Linktree websites and templates and things like that, and you'll find kind of what you're looking for if you're looking to just have a bare minimum website as opposed to having nothing. Wrapping up,
M0, et cetera, also said the number of people who buy the game but never play it must be huge too, especially during sales. Oh my goodness, yes.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I mean, AI War 1 or 2 basically is profitable from players that bought the game and never played it. I would almost swear by that, and that's really weird, but it's true.
I play a ton of things, but I probably haven't touched 70% of my library.
Same.
It's a really, and I think AI War 1 is, and I don't think AI War is like a unique example here, but rather the reason why I think it sold so well, but so few people have played it, is that it's a very hard game to get into. So when people hear very difficult, challenging game, but has amazing experience if you can get to it, they'll take that chance that they're going to bounce off of it, or maybe not even play it in the first place. So.
Just like more general, the kind of attitude Steam sales have created of like, oh, I'll probably want to play it eventually. Might as well get it now while it's on sale.
It's absolutely both. There's a lot of people who just buy the game and are like, I'll get to it, and hopefully when I retire, that kind of thing at some point, like that kind of thing is how you get to it with some games. I feel like I'm like, maybe some of these strategy games, some of these like long form games, I'm like, I'm gonna need extra brain space before I jump into that. But
for me, it's like when I get done with this, I'll have 17,000 more things to do. Cool,
right? And it's not like the games are, and especially really enjoyable, good releases they're not slowing down. There's going to continue to be more new games that come out that we're going to want to play. So it's just there you go. That's a happy problem.
An endless cycle.
Yeah. Just to wrap up,
players' ego to bait them into buying the game. And I'll let you go through what Missy's saying. And hi, Missy.
Hi, Missy. Are you over on YouTube? Yes.
Yes.
Isn't Valve already pretty easy to use its banhammer? It depends on what we're talking about. Like, there's certain things that developers know are like you just do not do. You certainly don't try to like beg for good reviews, things like that. People will come out, call you out for that. Even if Valve doesn't see it, like users will see it and call it out and stuff if they see it, because like users are well aware.
I can't remember. They named it something specifically to do something, and they got caught. We talked about it. I don't remember what it was. I can't
remember, but it was a gimmick name, right? That was meant to game, positive reviews or purchases, or I can't remember what it was.
Oh yeah,
but
yeah. It was. I think it was named, or they did the developer and publisher was very positive or overwhelmingly positive or something like that.
That's what it is. They
Oh.
named their thing. That was and that was called out. Yeah, that was called
they
out
got in
very
trouble
hard.
real quick.
That's very funny that you mentioned that. I've forgotten about that entirely, but now I remember because it's very stark in my head when you remember. You're like, wow, and it's the same. It's the same blue text and font, and that was the insidious part of it. And they're what, like maybe an inch apart as far as from the actual positive review section. Some days it helps me feel relaxed that I would never have to feel bored. Other days I'm stressed with how many good games I'm missing out. Yeah, no, it's cool to know that you're never going to be bored, but it is stressful to be like, man, I wanted to play some of these games. The nice thing is that I'm playing some games that came out like 4 or 5 years ago, and they're fun, and I'm not missing out on them now, and nobody's yelling at me for trying them 4 or 5 years later like I thought, so we're good. You know what I mean? Like,
this is where it is very similar to the world of books. Oh, sorry, I can't.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, just that the community in the publishing world is very much accepted that reading books and buying books are two different hobbies now. That you just kind of collect the ones you want to get to eventually, and also reading books, but it's not necessarily the same thing.
Yep. Yeah. No, I probably have 30 books that are still physical books that I have to read, and a little less on the ebooks. They're easier and more convenient to read, so I'll get to those. But no, I've gone back just recently since they've released the pixel remasters of Final Fantasy, and I've been going through, the first two I've already played through, and I've never experienced those before. So yeah, sometimes you get to go back and do cool stuff.
And the whole point here is that there can be a huge disparity between who reviews, who plays, and who owns your game, and that's normal. It's quite normal. If it's not a huge disparity, it probably something has probably not gone well. Like it's not hot there. You have enough numbers to get to where you need to be. So we have spent like a good chunk on this first one, which is totally okay. We were supposed to, and then we have some middle points that we'll get through, I think, a little bit faster, and then our bookend at the end, the community hub, to wrap up. But I just want to say on the user review front, be upfront about your items that Steam users have typically have gripes with. Such as game length, overpromising, dumbing down of an expected experience, etc. Also, you must avoid a buggy or broken launch. These are critical steps to take to control what we've already talked about is fairly uncontrollable. But to steer, I suppose, Sea of Thieves style, right, Bumpy? I can't control my ship in Sea of Thieves, but I can steer it. So I can push myself in certain directions. And I think making good decisions, if you have a Whitethorn Games title, which we've talked about in the past, it's a publisher that we work with, they're very wholesome games, a lot of times very short experiences, often anywhere between 90 minutes and 5.5 hours if regular playthrough. You need to be upfront about that. You need to be putting that out there, maybe even on the features list, or maybe even maybe in the features list you say with the exact time playthrough, or rather the range, because there's no exact time, right? Every player has their own time to play through, so there should be a range that you can roughly give. And then maybe in the top right corner of your Steam Store page, in the short description, you mention a short narrative experience or something along those lines that conveys that to the person that's getting the impression on your store page immediately, and setting expectations properly. And if you set expectations properly, I think you're taking the right steps to, direct things in the right direction of something that you can't actually control, but you're doing the right things to hopefully funnel in the right direction.
One final thought with that is, if you're getting a lot of feedback about a certain thing, then generally you might want to look at how you can evolve or change it, versus don't go, oh, well, this person has a problem with this person has a problem with that. You need the broader strokes. You don't necessarily have to take any suggestions exactly, but be like, ooh, everybody has a problem with my UI design. Maybe I need to rework that or readdress
exactly.
it. So
look for
use
patterns.
The feedback. Yeah, use the feedback. Yep. Especially larger, everybody kind of has this issue, versus this person really hates that I use a P that's lowercase in this instance. It's like, come on.
Yeah, if it helps spreadsheet it and count the amount of times that people make mention of, tally the amount of times that people make mention of something. And if you hit to a certain point where you're like, I've had 5 to 10 players point this out to me, that's a pattern, right? Like that's something that in general is saying, regardless of what you think, you're not delivering something to them that they're expecting, or that you're not. It's not reaching the players like you would hope. So even if you don't see any problem with it, you need to consider what could be different about it to strike a better chord with the players.
Greetings, Adam Doobie or Dubai Games. Welcome. And I believe our next point, good sir, is discount promotions.
So this is like my specialty. So I'm looking forward to talking about this. This is what I do.
I'm ready. Bring it on.
Yeah. No, I mean, I do this a lot I've done this for Arcen Games, which is AI War, for years and years. It's one of my main jobs on the in-between with Vertigo, like when we're not in like launch periods, we're not in major announcement periods. Okay, how do we make money? How do we continue to generate revenue? And the game discovery, Simon's game discovery, what is it called? I gotta get this right. His newsletter, Simon Carles, former Gama Sutra writer, has a really nice newsletter that I always like to reference.
Sure he does.
And I know what it's called. It is called the Game Discover. Gosh, why won't it come up all the way? Game Discover Co. newsletter. So I'm going to link that now because it took me forever to find it. Game Discover Co. newsletter. You don't have to actually be signed up to read it or subscribed. And I will mention that they also have a premium. So I'm going to put that in Twitter and Twitch and YouTube. If you like the kind of information we convey on here, a lot of it is just like either also conveyed on their newsletter or things that I confirm before I bring onto here is mentioned in that newsletter. Sometimes vice versa. I do talk to Simon occasionally. I have been featured in the newsletter a couple of times and such from the Indie Bros side. It's a good newsletter if you're into data. They are super analytics heavy, looking at always calling for information from Steam devs to grab and put on there and such. And so the reason why I mentioned it is one thing that they have confirmed again and again is that maybe it's not going to be this way all the time, but in 2021, if you're an indie game developer, one of your best tools for getting out there and getting more exposure for your games is discounting often, and basically as much as you possibly can. Now, this sometimes people kind of get defensive about this or kind of get like, I don't like that idea, because they confuse it with discount a lot, discount deep, 50%, 75%, 80%. That's not necessarily what we're saying. It could be depending on how much revenue you're making at different levels. But from my perspective, what you're trying to do is you're trying to discount as slightly as you can while still generating the revenue that you're expecting to during a discount or a sale. And then in addition, you're benefiting from that exposure every single time. Whether you're 10% off or 75% off, you're getting an exposure boost on Steam that you otherwise would not get if you weren't on discount. And so there are a lot of different ways to get on discount. Not a lot, but there's a few that you need to be aware of, and they're happening seemingly all the time. Like, if you're not keeping up on this, then you're missing out. You're missing out on discounts for customs, on like your own, pushing out on your own, and you're missing out on potential opportunities that are offered by Valve themselves and by third-party, other developers or other third-party publishers that bring together and do these like one-off events that you might be able to participate in, depending on your genre or your style of game, etc.
Well, I want to.
So before I jump
in real quick, one of the reasons this is as critically important as it is, and you may mention this down the road, but I feel like maybe even at the start, Steam specifically and PC gamers in general, they are not like most of the rest of the gamers in the world or the other platforms, if you will, as very, very large percentage of them will not buy a game that's not on sale. Some will not buy games unless they're heavily discounted, but it is very rare, even for me over the past several years, maybe a little bit less lately, but over the past several years, maybe 2% of the games I would buy would not be discounted. So, and I have like a library of over 2,000. So, yeah.
And I feel like that's really pervaded to all platforms at this point, at least to a percentage.
Consoles,
now,
people still buy games at.
But then, like Xbox is going for subscription now over like Game Pass over like discounting. Now we still do discounts on Cooks are Delicious 2 and 3 on Xbox, and we see better revenue during that period than when we don't. So there's still you will get more exposure and more people will buy your game total than if you were never on sale for the most part. This is a rare exception thing that we talk about sometimes. If your game is selling at full price where you want to or beyond, then you're on easy street. You don't need to do anything. You just continue to let it sell until that changes.
Drops, yeah.
Right. Like until that changes, you just ride that out. RimWorld did that. RimWorld barely discounts at all still.
Yeah.
Very,
I
very...
think of Factorio's still doing it. I was just looking at their page now because I wish I'd paid more attention pre-launch of how they made sure people would know it was never going to be on sale.
Right.
They have over 100,000 reviews for this game that has never been on sale. So what their sales must have been is bonkers. But how did they make sure everybody knew this was it forever?
Right. I mean, I don't remember exactly, but I would imagine they made substantial effort to point that out. And that's a point we've talked about before, which is standing behind a seal of quality for your game, which is to say, hey, if you're waiting for this to go on sale, go ahead and keep on waiting. We don't need you. Like, we're going to have plenty of players that want to play this game anyway because it's amazing. And so it's going to be,
I'm still of the mind that's, I mean, one or two people doing it, fine, but it's a very closed-minded way of doing things. But I mean,
can't do that unless you're amazing.
If
you can't do that unless you're selling amazing.
If you got in the game before in like early access and it was like discounted, maybe it was $15 then or something, and then it kind of increased price as it went on. I could see you doing something like that and being like, hey, you know what? The people who opted in early that supported us, we're never gonna, make them, be the ones that paid more than anyone else. So like,
which fair game might be the case.
Still very.
Which fair game might be the case for Factorio. Like that, I don't know if they.
I believe it was, but it it was still over $20. Like it was never like heavily discounted. It was just a little less.
The games that know that they're the best will generally do that. I think that's what RimWorld started. They were $20 off of, maybe even $30 off of Steam, no discounts. And then I think Minecraft did that too for a long time. Sold at full price off of Steam, $30 a copy. Checked his PayPal once, it was $400,000 suddenly in his account after just a weekend, that kind of thing. So these aren't games that are coming out of nowhere that get to do this. These are games that are like, I have established that I am one of the hottest items, like basically because I know people are trying to buy the game before it's even out, before it's on Steam, in the hundreds and if not thousands. In fact, it needs to be in the thousands really to be that kind of confirmation and stuff. And then, yes, there is some arrogance to it, Bumpy, but the arrogance comes from a place of actual data and fact and based in reality. And while
don't plan for it, like if you're watching this to figure out a strategy.
No,
let's not do
this
that
is
one.
An exception to the rule, and the developers are certainly not saying nah to the people who are going for the discounts and stuff. They're just saying, you're going to have to wait a while probably because this is something that we're going to ride until like Bumpy and I mentioned earlier, we were talking about earlier, until it doesn't make sense to anymore, until the sales really aren't coming in anymore at the level that you'd expect. And then at that point, you don't need to be prideful about it. You need to make your adjustments and if you want to be if you want to get the most out of your product, then you would need to make adjustments.
And that's where you wonder, looking at games who go into it knowing they're going to be discounting pretty regularly and knowing what the value of their game is. So discounting pricing originally knowing that they're going to be selling their games at a discount. And so saying that's the value versus games who say, this is our value up front. We're telling you this off the bat. You don't need to wait for it to be this price on sale. We're just going to sell it to you at this.
Right. And the key thing that we see a lot, especially on the Indie Brothers side, when we talk to developers or potential partners, is that they typically underprice themselves. They underprice their products. They don't most indie devs tend to lean, I guess, lawful good or chaotic good or whatever, in the sense that they're just not looking to gouge their customers. In fact, they're really afraid that they're going to get called out for that, even at, say, a $15 or a $10, excuse me, $15 or $10 like level. We often have to really push and encourage developers to understand that they have a quality product here that's worth a $19.99, $24.99, $29.99 retail price, and then to remind that a lot of your copies sold will be made at, if you're $30, will be made at the $17, threshold because of the 40% or whatever we're talking about there. Discount that at 40%. That's the sweet spot for this game to sell really well. Gets great exposure, turns lots of sales. Not to say that it doesn't sell well without it, but it's that spike you're looking for right during the sale. You're trying to spike things from the baseline that you see at full price. So it doesn't mean you sell nothing. Hopefully, if your game's good enough, you're probably selling, something at full price. But the point is that it's usually not enough to make ends meet for yourself or the company. Those sales are what's going to be the contributors to that. And you want to find the sweet spot to both spike the amount of sales you're getting and as well like bringing in like new wish lists from the impressions that get to see your game for the first time because they are looking in the sales area or because it's getting some kind of additional promotion on a sectional page or, if you're really fortunate, a Steam store front page discount. So launch discount is usually a must as well. This is something that I think a 10% is is like an industry standard thing to do. I've seen as high as like 25%, and then I've seen higher if it's like an early access release that's say been on sale for 40% off or 50% off, and the price doesn't change, and they want to continue to do that. That makes sense. There's also what we just talked about. You could discount maybe a little more heavily in your early access phase, and then say we're not doing that once we get to launch for at least 6 months or a year. And you could talk about that publicly, or you could price change. You could change your price, as we talked about with some of the games like Factorial, maybe RimWorld, yes, maybe not. I can't remember, but you can adjust prices as far as we're going to originally offer this as $15. When we get to full launch, we're going to actually sell it at $30 because we feel like that much more content will have been put in it during that time. Some things you just want to note on the technical side, on like the Steamworks side for this kind of stuff. If you change your price at any point, you then cannot discount or participate in any like major discounts for 30 days after, I believe is what that is. So there are certain things that you have to be aware of. Another thing with launch discounts that you have to be aware of is that once your game launches, once the launch discount starts, I believe you can usually do, or what you should be doing standard is a week. So once that week's over, it then has to be 30 days until your next discount. That includes something like the Steam Halloween sale, which just occurred last month. Now, Valve is open to helping you in this situation because it can be kind of like this math game that you really don't want to have to play of like, oh, if we launch at this point, we might not be able to be a part of the the summer sale or something like that. So what Valve does is they say, if you're close enough to the summer sale or to the Halloween sale, then what we'll do is we'll connect the launch discount to the actual event sale. And so you'll keep your 10% discount from the start of your launch discount through the, say, Halloween sale and be on sale for 11 days versus 7. So that could be beneficial. That can actually be helpful because now you're launching with your own discount launch day, but you're not missing out on that seasonal discount, which you're a new game. That's great exposure to be part of those kind of seasonal sales. You really are trying not to miss those. So like launching like December, we know every year around December 20th or so, there is a Steam winter sale that starts that usually runs through like the first few days of January. So it would be detrimental to your launch to, say, launch in like early to mid-December, maybe like before December 15th. Because if you launch before December 15th, then Valve may not be able or willing to connect you to the Steam winter sale that you're going to really want to be a part of. Launching in December in general, a little questionable, I think, as a whole. But there's a lot of developers that do it anyway, and if you're gonna do that, you want to basically work it out so that you're not excluding yourself from the second largest sale or promotion that Steam does annually.
Okay, so here's something that I was curious about. I was talking to somebody else about this, and you've mentioned it, so I don't know how it works exactly.
Mhm.
But as far as when you add people to the wish list, they do get notified by email and so on and so forth, for a sale being out there.
Or launch. If they pre-launch
launch.
wish listed. Yep.
Launch. One thing that they don't, now this is going to be two-part, this doesn't really have anything to do with the discount, but it just got me thinking and I wanted to ask. You know how they're allowing play tests right now, right? You can actually go and do a play test for your game, and you essentially can run any kind of version of the game you want, and people can play it. It's like an extended demo or whatever. Does following allow people to know that, like, do they get a notification of that?
So you're talking about following a developer
Steam.
versus wishlisting a game?
Yeah.
So following, to me, is helpful in terms of seeing updates within your Steam app itself. If you follow a developer, then a lot of the updates that you'll see in that top column if you open Steam, you have that, or not column, but row. That top row of your library has a bunch of updates or rather announcement posts for those updates. Those will show up if you're following, for any developer you're following, in addition to any game I think you have actively downloaded. I don't know if that's 100%. I'm not sure. I don't think you get an email if you're a follower about a game release. You might. They should do that. But I know that if you wishlist a game, obviously, if the game is released and or if it's 20% discount or higher, than the wishlist folks get an email on that as well. So they're two different mechanisms, right?
So one is, it says here, is released or on sale, and the other one is community activity feed. So that's I don't know. That's kind of a slippery slope, I guess, in many ways. As I know this is off topic. I'll close it out here in a second.
You're good.
The whole community announcements are great if you're not one that puts out a bunch of those. So you can use that to be like, hey, we're going to do a play test, or hey, we have an upcoming game, maybe check it out, something like that. But people, to be honest, I've never followed a developer or anything like that, just because it's new and I check back off of the wish list myself. I'm actually pretty active with what I do, so it's never really been a thing I can that I've done. But it does look like you would be able to notify people of special events coming up, or like I said, the play test or something along those lines. So maybe pushing follow as well, if you're not egregious with your community updates, could be useful. Yeah,
and to me, it's just another mechanism to alert players who are already interested in a game that you've released before, part of your community, that just didn't get the memo. It's crazy to me how many people own Cooks Are Delicious 1 and or 2 that doesn't know that 2 and or 3 exist.
Yeah.
So it's always something that you have to fight for. And I think like having, more ways to reach out and connect is important. And so the follow has at least afforded developers an additional opportunity to like communicate. It is a slippery slope in one way, in that the developers have to honor. I can't put like we knew we would do one Chef Squad post on like Cook Serve Delicious pages, but we couldn't just egregiously just talk about Chef Squad all the time on those. Yeah, on that post. That would be just
maybe a monthly update or something wouldn't be too bad.
Bad ethics. Otherwise, it's just ethically, it's just not a good look, I think.
What I would like to, the whole thing that spawned this was Adam Dubai, or Doobie Games, saying that the game is currently on discount, 65% off. I have it up right now. And you made a post on our games deals. It went quite well, and wishlist know about the sale. Is there anything else that could be done? So I was just trying to think, well, would following help? But it seems like the wishlist thing is more accessible, and with follow, you'd have to still make a single announcement yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it's just something that you want to make sure that if you could tie something to it, like the discount means something more than just the discount, like you're going to do something additional with your current game, or if you're working on something else, maybe tie an update to, if you can't tie yourself to like what you're doing within this game. Maybe talk about what you're doing, in the future, that kind of thing. And like put that together. Otherwise, for the most part, a lot of these sales that we do are kind of fire and forget because Steam does carry the day for the most part. Getting on Steam, doing the Reddit stuff is not necessarily a pointless thing to do. It does add, I think, incrementally to it, but I don't think it would say like, oh, because of I don't think a Reddit post makes or breaks like your sale figures from that discount. On that note, I think he's probably running a custom discount right now, and so that lets me to kind of touch on that real quick. So custom discounts, when I say custom, what I really am saying is developer is in control of the dates, developer can push it out. So that's what I mean by custom, if that makes sense to you too. Versus, a lot of the other sales that we talk about, like the Halloween event sale, that's not something that we necessarily have control over. We just get asked to participate and then give a
it's almost like they said, a participation versus a standalone sale. Would that be another way of phrasing it?
Sure, you get a standalone. You get to do a standalone. Like this isn't involving any other, product unless you add the same products that you have in your developer suite at the same time, which we often do, of course.
So then you would do a developer sale. Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah. And the key thing here is that you really don't have to make it anything if you don't want to. Like I said, you can fire the discounts out and forget about them if you want to, and you'll get the revenue boost and the wish list boost that you're probably looking for. As long as your baseline sales are nil. Go ahead, Tiny.
I was gonna say maybe it's worth looking at it in a way of don't worry too much about using all of your tools on the sale, like every Reddit, whatever. Anywhere you post it, you're gonna see diminishing returns the next time you're on sale, and you're gonna be on sale again. So don't try to put all of your firepower between this one sale because it's gonna come around again because this is how Steam works. So
yeah, and like with Reddit and that kind of stuff, I'm thinking more about trying to get visibility for announcements and those kind of things because that matters more and has a bigger impact than trying to get. And again, it's not calling it out. It's fine to post about your sales on Reddit for the additional views and looks, especially if you're just trying to bubble up to a certain level and you haven't gotten that exposure from Steam that you're looking for yet. So that's totally fine to do that. But it's just it's like pick your battles with that kind of thing and. Try to involve yourself. One thing that I would think to wrap up on that question that you mentioned from the chat is try to stay within Steam when you're making your efforts because that's going to matter much more than anything you do outside of Steam. Almost certainly. Although we have seen some certain effects from outside of Steam recently, which we will hopefully get a chance to talk about later down the road with the Tiny Disasters efforts and stuff. But for the most part, everything's happening within the store itself. A lot of those mechanisms, a lot of people that are involved, people can come from outside with links a little bit, but I'm thinking we're talking about like 80% of the people involved are going to be finding your sale through Steam itself.
Yeah, the one other thing that you might want to do, and again, this is one of those kind of Hail Mary things, reach out to maybe some content creators that you like, just a handful, and see if maybe they have any interest. Especially with this like being a horror game around Halloween, maybe they do something, they cover it, and it gives you a little bit of a boost.
If anyone's championed your game before, and you have people in the community that are like mavens, content creators, etc., that are willing to share on their channels like the sale, that kind of thing, it's worth sending an email and just saying, hey, thanks for supporting us in the past. Just want to let you know we're running a discount next week, and we'd love any shout or support you could give. No worries if not, kind of that kind of thing. That generally will help you out, like just to get some additional conversation on it, and then. There are certain, social media accounts. Wario64, I think, is one of them. There's a few other ones that focus on sales and point out certain discounts as well. But again, I think that only incrementally adds. Like, I don't think it's like, oh, these have to happen or to make or break your sale. It usually not. No. For the most part, what will be happening, making or breaking your sale, will be within, kind of Steam itself. So custom discounts, real quick on that. You get to do a new custom discount every 6 weeks, essentially. So if you think about it, there's probably about 6 to 8 total Steam events every year, like the Halloween sale, the upcoming autumn and winter sales, summer sale, the Lunar New Year's sale, spring sale, I think is the thing. So there's just, there are, you're going to have a chance to participate in these major store-wide sales, and you're going to want to do that 100%. But in between, you have a lot of time to work these customs out. So it's important to kind of come up with a schedule. And this is something Indie Brothers does for various developers, is we'll sit down and say, okay, we're going to make a schedule for you that you can essentially use, and you can stick to, by the letter, or you can just kind of use it as a template, as a guide. And that essentially allows them to have something that they can refer to make sure they're putting themselves on discount as many times, as much as they can. If Cooks Are Delicious games right now, in the way things work, if they could be on sale on Steam 365 days of the year, then David and I would do that. We would do that in an instant because of the results. Yeah. Because of how much traffic there is from users and how much traffic there is from games. Because there's no longer a worry about, oh no, someone's going to see that my game's on sale all the time and think that's who cares? One person. There's more people. There's going to be more people all the time. New people all the time.
The person will either buy it or they won't. I mean, it's not like it matters if it's on sale all the time, right?
It's a very minor perception thing. Very insignificant perception thing to worry about. As it turns out.
The best example I can think of here is from books again, but advice I saw that really resonated was Harry Potter still goes on sale and still ranks what it does. If people are just discovering Harry Potter now.
Right. Absolutely. Or saying, I've heard about this a million times, but this is the time now that I've been led down the funnel 30 times before and didn't buy it, but this now is the time I'm going to do it. So that absolutely happens. I know I've done that before. I've looked at a game a million trillion times. Nope, pass. Nope. And then finally, okay, sure. Like it happens. It's totally psychology. Humans do that. So the whole point is, whatever discount that you feel is large enough to generate the revenue that you would like to see, that's your sweet spot. Whether it's 10%, that would be great. But usually it's going to be higher than 20, 25, 30, maybe 40, 50%. A lot of times we'll see it right in that 50% range. A game that's been out for 6 months to a year or 2 years, you're eventually going to creep up to 75%. 75% is where I like to cap. Because generally you're leaving money on the table if you sell at 80% or higher. What I mean by that is that you'll see the same amount of sale totals, like total sales, at 75% that you would at 80, 85, and 90%. So it's important, maybe not 90, but again, you're talking about a very, very small amount of revenue at that point, at 90% per unit. So 75% feels like the sweet spot in terms of the user feels pleased with a very nice discount. It actually combats the race to the bottom ever so slightly, because we're saying, no, we're not going to go beyond 75% off. Like, I don't want to sell my game for pennies. Please don't make me do that. And that was what we all kind of ran to 5-10 years ago, when there was this massive, oh God, people will just buy your game at a viral level if you sell it at a super, super low price. And that fad did not last. And because there's a flooding of it already. There's already a flood that's happened, and now we just sit on top of the messy waters of it all. But I feel like the 75% off cap is actually fighting a little bit against that. No, you're not going to get my $15 game for less than $3.24. $3.24. That's the lowest you're going to get it. You're not going to get it for $1 or whatever. And then people have to go, that's okay. That's okay. That's still super cheap. That's okay. And then
please don't spend any of your time worrying about how to get people who will only buy games at 90% to buy your game. That is not your target market.
No, it should, hopefully not. Unless you're like a $5 game or going for like that kind of market in the first place, and that's like the whole thing is sort of planned around that, then yeah, you shouldn't be worrying about those people. And anytime you feel tempted to go that low, it means there's some desperation going on, and you have to consider what that desperation means. I'm going to redo my camera. It's going a little blurry. So, wrapping up on the discount front, custom as much as possible in between, and make sure that it's aligned as well as it can, so that you're on sale as many days as possible throughout the year, at that discount level that you feel like is the sweet spot to convert. Like I said, the analytics guys, I'm into analytics somewhat, but I'm very anecdotal, as people know. The analytics guys, like Simon Carlos, back this up. They say this is what you need to be doing right now in terms of getting the most out of your product. It sounds a little egregious, it sounds a little aggressive, but it's because of the exposure and the new wish lists that you get out of it that really make a lot of sense to do it all the time. Because otherwise, you're just languishing. You're on sale full price. And if you're not getting, that, if you're not in that exception that we talked about earlier, the Factorio RimWorld crowd, which is probably not going to be most people, as we've already discussed.
Can you imagine how much they'd make if they actually put it on sale, though? That's some money. But the receipts are already so golden. So it's just one of those things, right? Like, it's like, well, we could make more millions, I guess, but we're already making more millions. Like that's where they're at.
From a developer community perspective, like, yes, from a player perspective, less fun. But having those games saying, this is the work we put in, this is our value. We don't need to just make as much money as possible. We want our game to be valued. I think that's really important.
It needs to exist, I feel like, to some degree. If everybody just went the same way on everything, then we'd have problems. And we already are close to that in so many ways in our industry and society. We have a lot of everybody leans this way except for a very small percentage fights back or that kind of thing. And so we need that small percentage. I think we need, in general, we need that. But yeah, anyway, discount often, not deep, but find the sweet spot. Be on sale as much as you can. And this goes for consoles as well. Consoles have less opportunities for sales than Steam, but they're still out there. Xbox and Switch are a little bit easier to get into. Sony can be a little more challenging to get even your foot in the door to get opportunities to discount, but do what you can. If you have a rep or someone that you can talk to on that side to get your foot in the door, try to do that. We just see our best revenue and we get more people talking about our games when they're on sale versus when they're not. So that it's not just revenue, it's not just money as the bottom line here with the discounts. It's much more than that.
Okay, are we ready for our next point, Senior Cup and Tiny Disaster?
I think we better be. Yep, we better be.
We're going to be moving on into store and Steam platform traffic breakdown page. I can't show this because I don't have access to anything like this. So
no, and this is some Steam backend stuff that I think we would get in trouble with maybe posting or maybe sharing anyway on like a stream. So we're going to have to maybe kind of visualize this as we talked about some of the, like we did last time when we talked about some of the back-end Steamworks stuff. We can't necessarily just bring it to the forefront. So
if you want to visualize it, if you haven't seen it, there's a lot of tabs. Nothing goes where you think it's going to go. And it's all just a maze of information.
Right. And this is what I'm going to kind of get into a little bit is these next few points are more about the technical aspects of this. So the store and Steam page platform traffic, store and Steam platform traffic breakdown page. Got that. It's good to go over this data at least occasionally to see where people are discovering the current iteration of your store page. I say iteration because you should be making adjustments based on this data if you'd like to experiment and try to drive more traffic through the best fit subcategory landing pages, lists, etc. So, TD, I think you've actually worked with some of this with one of our recent clients with Montage. I'm not sure if you saw this kind of stuff exactly, but this is where you would gain a lot of the inter-Steam info, like not coming necessarily out from ads outside of Steam, but this is where you'd be like, okay, they're coming from the coming soon section, or they're coming from the indie genre or sub page, that kind of stuff. And if you're seeing that you're getting a lot of traffic from some of these sections, you might say we may want to have our page, lean a little bit more into this kind of stuff. It's not something you want to pour over every day, or something that you want to be like, this is the important stuff that I need to know. It's just a piece of the puzzle. But I think it can help if you're looking for additional kind of like paths, like help me light the way on how I need to proceed to further optimize my Steam store page. This is a way to look. This is an area that you can look at and conceivably glean some decent items to take forward with. I'm going to open it just to make sure real quick if there's anything else I want to touch on with it. Sorry for the holdup. Oh, cool. They won't even let me in the financial side. Well, I can wing it on that, but I would like to find.
So, and what I meant before, yeah, I think at this point it would be too late with Factorio going on sale, but they didn't have that mindset to begin with. I feel like they would have done much better. There'd be a lot more people playing the game and so on and so forth. That was my point. But
it is true. That is true. That you would have more total people enjoying the game.
Yeah.
I guess it's more of a principle stand at this point, I suppose. Yeah.
It's something. But like I said, the whole thing I've kind of prefaced this much earlier on was people on Steam specifically for years have gotten into the mindset of they're only going to buy stuff that goes on sale. Like vast majority of the people who purchase stuff on Steam do it during a discount. And, there's people who are super eager to buy a game on release day or pre-order. They do that. There's been a lot of pre-order bad situations that have gone down over the past few years specifically. So pre-ordering seems to be happening less and less, and people are fighting against it, which is weird to me and crazy. The stuff that I super enjoyed back before I started doing what I do and everything else, I would pre-order. I would get it way ahead of time and so on and so forth. But again, 90% of what I would get on Steam, I would get at, a discount, and usually a giant discount. So it's just weird to be like, I don't care. I'm doing it this way. I mean, they're happy with where they're at and what they've done. That's great.
I just went and looked, like, they're still selling I counted, so the 64th best-selling game on Steam right now. I don't think they're worried.
Right, and they're trying to maybe change that perception, Bumpy, of everybody thinks that they have to have a discount to buy that game. Will Factorio itself suffer because of this? Yeah, probably. But will it set a precedent that can be used by future games potentially? Yeah, probably. So I just think that, you have to... I agree with the fact that, from a consumer standpoint, I'm like, I've never considered buying Factorio to this point because I'm like you, Bumpy. I wish list and I wait for a price. I'm like, that looks good to me. So I totally understand where you're coming from. I think it's just this philosophical thing that they're saying because everybody feels like this, that there's this like rush that they need a discount on the PC side. We're going to kind of rage against that thought, and we're going to see and they had essentially the ammo to try this experiment because they knew Factorio was good enough to sell at that level. But I mean, I do understand they are 100% missing out on probably double the amount of people, if not more, playing their game at this point. Yeah. Well, I don't even know how many playing, so I don't want to go crazy. I don't want to go 100 times as much. So you do get from the store and Steam page platform traffic breakdown, you get impressions, click-through rate, and visits. Click-through rate being, when they see your art, capsule art somewhere, and that's a chance to click through, and then they actually click on it, go through to your store page, then that's so we have this is the most recent week. You can range this as much as you want as far as how long your game has been out. You can obviously do most recent week, last 2 weeks, 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, lifetime, custom. So last week we had a click-through rate of 4.58%, meaning that those who had impressions on our game somewhere on the store page, 4.5% of them clicked through to the store page. I would venture a guess to say that this is good. I don't think it's amazing or great or anything like that, but I bet you it's not bad. I bet you a lot of click-through rates would be a little bit lower than that. They could probably be around the 1 to 3% section, but that's based on how much visibility you're getting in the first place. You know what I mean? Your store page exists, of course, but on Steam, how do they get there?
What? Why doesn't Cook So Delicious even show up under cooking when I do a search for cooking? That's weird.
When you do cooking on,
there it is.
like
number
tag.
110 or something.
A lot of cooking games. Yeah.
But all right, the top one is Black Desert. Project Zomboid is up there.
Oh yeah, if you have anything with cooking at all in your game, you are a cooking game. That's true.
So is it that and then based on popularity from there? Because that's crazy.
If you see Zomboid up top like that, then that's probably something along those lines. Because Zomboid's always up there.
Well, there you go. We learned something terrible and new. Like, geez, like most of these are not cooking games.
Potion craft is on there too, and I'm guessing there's no actual cooking. Like mixing things, it's cooking adjacent, but I'm guessing there's no actual cooking in potion craft.
Yeah, and that discoverability is definitely something that I'm not trying to shrug my shoulders about it, but it's definitely something that you would like to see Valve improve upon. But it's been such a gradual thing for such a long time that I'm not over here holding my breath. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not anything that I'm like yelling at Valve about, but you would like to see more of that for sure. Like, they have made gradual strides, in terms of discoverability and trying to improve things for developers who aren't in this to make $10 million plus of revenue, which Valve, of course, naturally tends to value those developers a little bit more, those publishers, those partners. So the last 5 years has been a lot of conversation with Valve about what about the little guy? What about the devs who bring something to the table that no one else really does, at the AAA level brings, because they don't take these experimental opportunities or chances on these games, or never would, based on how they run their businesses. Do you want to, the question over the last 5 years to Valve was, do you want to push down and hold down these kind of games that, people would like to discover, people would like to play, to some degree, maybe not the vast majority of the AAA industry or gamers, but a significant amount enough that can make a difference. And the question to Valve is it enough to make a difference to us? Or do we want to just go all in capitalism? And luckily there seems to be a little bit of a balance there, as opposed to just saying, kind of flipping us the bird and moving on. And I don't feel like they have ever done that. I'm just saying that is something that they could do. That is something that they could easily do. They could just shun every indie, every narrative, every small 2D game ever, and they would not think about it in terms of their bottom dollar. It would not affect them, their bottom line or anything like that. So it is something that
some rhyme or reason to this, because there's I could see maybe it's based off popularity. Like, oh, this game has a lot more user reviews, a lot more people bought it, but nope. I looked at several that were that had less than 10 reviews on it. And
maybe there's some chronological stuff going on. I'm not sure. In terms of
starting by relevance is a balance of how recent it is versus how well reviewed versus what type's tagged by.
Yeah, there's a lot of different factors probably on that. And then, of course, if you're logged in, then it's a different thing altogether, because they have a profile on you and they're pushing certain.
They have a profile on me.
They'll create a profile on you, whether it's your profile or not, which we've discovered in many cases it's not. It's not a very accurate profile, like at times. So that's again something that they're gradually trying to get to. They're making strides in that direction. Hopefully they get there someday. Again, not something that you're holding your breath on, but rather as a developer, like, where we're sitting, how or helping developers, like, how can we work with what we have? Because that's all we have. We don't have anything that they haven't put out yet. We have to work with what's there.
And I think with the weirdness of the algorithm, every other indie game is also working against, so you're not at a disadvantage. It's just
that's true. That's true. If you don't have the viral push to push out in front of everybody else, then you're probably in the same boat as 98% of your competition. So, I mean, you start with that kind of thought. It can be depressing, but it also is like, I just need to get ahead of what a lot of people just can't get. I need to get over one hump that a lot of people just can't get over, and then all of a sudden things can change massively for you. So, so let's move on to financial access, since we're getting close to our 90-minute period where admittedly my son is home sick from school today. He's been a master. He's been masterful. I really appreciate him. So shout out to the J-Man. Financial access. This is where you can get fairly detailed breakdowns of your sales, wish lists, refunds, etc. This allows you to customize the period. Just like we were talking about with the analytics the store and Steam platform traffic breakdown page, you can customize the period of time you'd like to see those numbers for. So you can compare to week, month to month, how sales are this month versus last month, all that kind of stuff. Note that it's best to wait a day before checking your numbers instead of looking at any data the day it's coming in, as the data is not fully updated in real time and therefore it's inaccurate. So if your sale starts, like a big Steam daily deal starts, and you look at it 2 hours in and you're like, we've only sold like 100 copies. I was hoping we had sold like 1,000 by now. It's like, well, you might have. And it's likely you've sold many more, but you just don't understand it. You didn't realize that the data is not in real time and that you have to give it time to compile and then list in your financial thing. And the best way to do that is to just check the day before and just wait until it's totally locked in, because it's just not locked in during the same day and you don't know what you're going to get. So any questions on that? You get some crazy breakdowns, you guys. Like, you can see wish lists total, wish lists that have originally wish listed and since converted, wish lists that have wish listed and since unwish listed, purchases that have been refunded, purchases, all that. Like, you can get into crazy percentages and detail on that kind of stuff. It is something to like look into and study and know how it works. But just know that it can become a little obsessive, especially on like the launch day or launch week when you're seeing actual numbers come in. Make sure that you're not just make sure you're taking breaks and not just sitting there in front of your finance sheet refreshing every 10 minutes and stuff and just saying how much more, because it can get that way. In the early on, that was something that I did all the time, and then I was like, why am I so tired after a couple of days of those and stuff.
When I launch a new video that I hope is doing well, it's like, come on, how many people do I got now? It's true,
and there's a dopamine hit. Same with social media, right? When you're getting likes
stress.
and
no dopamine.
And all that kind of stuff.
There's no dopamine. It's just stress.
Well, I know, but it's like dopamine to relieve the stress of I need these hits, that kind of stuff. But it's true. It's really detailed though. I really like the amount of information they give. Valve gets called out for a lot of vagaries and things that they're not giving you enough of. I don't feel like the financial access area is super one of those areas. I feel like you can get a lot of details out of it. There are certain things like you can see an international breakdown of the countries where your or regions where your game is selling. So if you say I want to see what non-English regions are purchasing the game the most, so that maybe we can invest more into those regions with localizations and such. It's cool. You can get a lot of information from that based on how your game is doing in the first place. Of course, you want to get to a certain point so that you can sell well enough so that you're getting a really, a nice survey of stuff. But you can do that even by not selling your game, like the play testing stuff that Bumpy was talking about before. You can get a lot of that, international breakdown and other things of that sort through Steamworks as well. That can give you that kind of information before you go on sale, even like, oh, this game is doing really well in this country on the pre-release. You know what I mean? Maybe we could focus on putting some localization efforts into Germany or France, etc. Region before we release, and we'll see better sales total.
Question from Missy, kind of on this topic. In the wishlisted and bought, does it count when someone bought it outside Steam, or how will it see that one?
It won't see it. Yeah, you have to purchase through Steam to get the wishlist conversion. So someone wishlists your game and then buys it on GOG. That wishlist will just continue to be wishlisted on Steam.
Well, what if you buy it from another one that gives you a Steam code? I think that might be more specific.
I think at that point it will eliminate the wish list. Maybe it'll convert. That's a great question. I don't know if it does or not. I really don't know if that would convert. I would assume yes. Because if you enter
I assume the other way, just because on financial tracking in Steam's totals of the money you've earned, they don't have that money.
That's true, but by activating the Steam code, the wish list you would imagine would disappear, which at that point might cause the wish list to say this is now converted. I think actually, you know what it is? I think that they actually have a breakdown. I can look at this in just a second, but if I can, let's see if I can reach the financial page. If I can't, I will have to just sort of go with what I remember. But what I remember is that they tell you if a wish list was converted through a gift code or an activation.
Okay.
So it would be a separate percentage from a standard purchase wish list conversion, but still counted. Let's go with that, and I will confirm it or deny it in a moment here as I'm getting into it.
They're talking about Poppy playtime. I think one of the reasons that game did well isn't necessarily the length. That might have had something to do with it. But I think it's a lot more of games that are akin to Five Nights at Freddy's and things of that nature. They have this like hidden lore and these story things, and it's something that people can just be like, oh, I got scared or whatever, overreact and do the stuff that YouTubers and Twitch streamers do. So I don't know if like the game was 2 hours or 4 hours long that it would have gotten much less coverage, but yeah, you're right. There probably is something to shorter games getting coverage, especially more from streamers than necessarily YouTubers, I would assume. So people that do like Twitch streams and whatnot, because they want to go and cover like 33 things in one day, and they can do that. Whereas a YouTube person would, probably want to play through to the end if possible. And yes, there is always the risk of a 2-hour game getting refunded. They play through it, they beat it, and they're like, oh, wow. But you have to hope, and I know that's a scary thing, hope that people in general are just not the worst people alive.
Generally
you can run into
speaking,
some of those, but
I think that you're not going to see a majority of people ever do that to your game.
Yeah.
So that you can rely on that. And I think that I've seen that newsletter, that Hat and Simon's newsletter, point out that most games that are 1 to 2 hours have the same or do not have higher refund rates than other games. So it may even feel like people are refunding this. It's actually not any higher than maybe say a game that had hundreds of hours of content. They're still getting refunded at a 15% clip, just like you. It seems to be that's what's coming out of the wash in the most part. So that those people definitely exist, but I don't think that they're affecting the number significantly, which is good.
I think he mentioned like a 10% conversion or something like that.
Mm-hmm. So other things that I forgot to mention that you can find in the sale activation reports, which are really interesting. You can get remote play stats, controller stats, as in people who are actually interacting with the remote play aspects of your game, using controllers, what inputs they're using. Like you can say, are they using keyboard, mouse? Are they using Xbox, 360, that kind of stuff, wired. Downloads by region, and a really interesting one if you have like a games as a service or a roguelike or something that's really active, you have access to concurrent user and daily active user stats, so you can see who's actively concurrently playing your game in the moment. That's one thing that is actually real time.
I love this kind of data. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
I can see how you would just never look away from it, though, like thinking about the advertising stuff I'm doing for one of our clients now and the data I'm getting on that side. And then if I also had the power to see how that was converting on Steam and looking at it, you couldn't pry me away from it. That's just where I'd live.
Yep. And so we would basically have to, like take your computer away after a week or something like that, or, something like that.
I would feel like I was like playing some sort of management game, but the stakes are so much higher. I'm like, I'll just play with these numbers and see what happens over here.
And then we put you in rehab for sure, like after that. But like looking at the wish list things real quick, since I got it up. So there's a wish list edition. You get a lifetime overview at the top of your wish list summary, and then you can actually get into like custom periods and all that kind of stuff. But you get lifetime overview at the top, and that includes wish list additions, deletions, purchases and activations, and gifts. And I think gifts would qualify as maybe getting the game on Humble and then using the store page or the Steam code to activate it on Steam. I think that would count as a wish list gift. So, and then you have current outstanding wish lists. So I can share this. I don't mind sharing this about Cookserve Delicious 3. Cookserve Delicious 3 has a total of 93,360 wish list additions in its lifetime, and its current outstanding wish lists are 42,568. So between 16,000 deletions, 33,000 purchases and activations, and 1,300 gifts. That makes the 50,000 or so difference between the 93,000 total additions and the current 42,500 current outstanding. That's a lifetime conversion rate of 37%, which is above the Steam average, according to Steam itself.
Interesting. Can you see, like, how often does it happen that someone buys the game without ever doing that wish list step first? Just converting from the page?
I can also confirm a humble code. It does consider it a gift or guest pass in your thing.
So yeah, so as you can see, it's not a huge number. It's only like 1,300 compared to like the tens of thousands that are going on in those other numbers and stuff. So it's not nothing, but it's not like a major percentage that you'll see on that conversions. Other than reverse engineering it, TD, I don't know if you can get that number. You could probably reverse engineer it though, based on how many converted through the wish list, right? Like, and you're saying, okay, well, how many are remaining? How many are left that didn't? And that would be maybe your total, what you're looking for. Or maybe I'm dumb at math and I don't know what I'm talking about. Like,
it's just a curiosity thing of, even outside of the data, how often does that happen? I'm interested to know.
Yep. And then it also gives like a Windows, Mac, Linux breakdown if you have multiple platforms. I can tell you that Windows is 4,000 times better than Mac and way higher than Linux. So, like unspecified platform, or total platform. Sorry. Oh my gosh, this is even more. So Windows is 40,393. Mac is 1,318. Linux is 209. Unspecified platform, which is vast majority Windows, they just did not click Windows, Mac, or Linux in the survey, 51,440. So we're talking about close to, even if we said Mac, let's say we give Mac and Linux each their totals in the unspecified platform, so they double the amount that they have now. You would still have around 100,000 copies sold for every 1.1 thousand of Mac and for every 0.2 essentially of Linux. So unfortunately, Mac and Linux users, that is what developers are looking at a lot of times when they're not bringing their game to your platform. Is that there is just no money in it. It's Cooks Are Delicious 3 is a really is a strong selling game for an indie, and it only has sold 1,500 copies total between Mac and Linux, likely 90,000 total, and this is through Steam, on Windows. So it's a huge disparity, and I'm not trying to slam Mac or Linux, just giving realities and why a lot of Linux users are going, why did you make this game for this platform? That's why. That said, a lot of times making a Linux build is easier than you might imagine from converting a PC to a Linux build. So it's not like you should just outright refuse it or anything. I think Mac actually takes more effort, but as you can see, you actually would get, relatively more sales comparably. So.
All right, are we ready for
Bumpy over there with his PC does not really care about this conversation. He's like, PC.
Come on now, PC's the way to be. Just saying.
I mean, it's a good platform. I get where Linux comes from, by the way. I do understand, because Linux is like, I don't want to have to do Microsoft Windows. I get that.
I've converted a hardcore don't fear the penguin Linux lover into finally getting a PC, because he had to jump through so many hoops all the time. Anytime he wanted to do anything, he's like, I have more control. I don't care. I click an icon, it works. What is the problem here?
It's very true. You get more control, but you have much more overhead to have to handle a lot of times to get to what you want to get done.
But it is good to have the option.
Raspberry Pi is really cool. It's Linux-based, little tiny microcomputer that you can do all this different stuff on. But it's not something that I would replace my PC with. But this is not the conversation we're having now. So we'll digress. And we're about 10 minutes over, but we're still needing to discuss our community hub.
So I think that one could be a whole other chat.
I was about to say, do we want to call it today and maybe say, let's do Community Hub on a different date? Because I think that makes a lot of sense. Community Hub definitely could be an hour, maybe even a 90-minute subject on its own.
Yeah, even when you were going over the points ahead of time, you're like, oh, this is a whole thing on its own. So
it is true. And we are at 100 minutes into the pod, or about, I guess, 95 minutes into the podcast. This is what that is, I guess, whenever I'm trying to call it the stream. I think let's wrap up today, and let's save Community Hub discussion for another date. We know I don't think I think we have something going on already for next week. I'm not 100%.
We booked out the rest of the year, so we'll look at it and figure it out.
Okay, cool. So this one might come back in early January if we might find a spot for it sooner, but most likely early January. We'll get into the community hub. But yeah, there was a lot to cover, and honestly, we had to skim some of the stuff because we had to get through some of it. But if you are a Steam developer and you have access to some of this stuff, the financial access, the Steamworks side with the store and Steam platform traffic breakdown page, the different areas of discount promotions, take a look at that kind of stuff. Also, a special note if you are a Steam dev, the custom discount mechanism is different than joining in like a Halloween or autumn sale. And if that sounds confusing, it definitely is. You want to make sure that you understand how to do that. You can look it up and get tutorials through that. Maybe we'll do that at some point, but we can't do that today. But that's something that you really want to know. Tiny Disaster hinted at. Sometimes Steamworks can get very convoluted and have multiple sections for things they really shouldn't have multiple sections for.
So, I believe next week, based off our list, the one that we were going to do this week, but we postponed a week. It's kind of a question mark. So, let's say we move into Indie Studio Pitfalls.
Indie Studio Pitfalls. I am looking forward to this because I imagine you two will have a lot of input and thoughts and feedback on this subject as well.
I'm going to break out the old Factorio. No, I'm kidding.
Do you like how I put that on YouTube? I was like, it's going to be great because they're going to talk the whole time. I'm not going to do
You're not going to do anything. What do you know about indie studios? Come on now.
I'll be, I mean, I'll come up with some notes, but this is definitely a roundtable collaborative discussion, this next one for sure. I demand it.
Tiny Disaster doesn't look so sure.
But I've never worked at an indie studio. What do I know about this?
You two are the outside looking in. It's like I see your pitfalls. I see them right. I could see it right in front of me. And y'all have worked here. I mean, dang near a year, if not more. I know Bumpy's been over a year. I think you're getting very close to TD. So you're getting less. Those excuses aren't floating as much as you continue to work within the industry and continue to work at our company. So I will only accept that for a short amount of time further. And just don't make me blather on next week. Get in there and mix it up. Not that we had to do that this week. Certain elements, it was definitely, like I said, my area, my department to discuss some of this Steam stuff. Happy to take that on. But next week is going to be roundtable, baby. Roundtable pizza.
Except there's only 3 of us. It's going to be a triangular table, but it's fine.
Triangulate, yes.
We're going to be like the Triforce. It's totally fine. All right, folks, that's pretty much it for the stream. Hopefully you all enjoyed, got some questions answered. If we didn't answer whatever specifically that you were asking, somehow we missed it or what have you, feel free to hit us up on Twitter at IndieBrosPR, and we will try to get that to you. Do we have private messages open on that? I don't know. It's been a while since I've looked.
I think our DMs are open on our Twitter account, yeah.
So if not, just bug us and we will. I say bug us, but message us and we'll get in contact with you. And that's pretty much it. So next week, I've already forgot because my brain is not working today. Next week we'll be diving into the Indie Studio Pitfalls and we'll be getting that going. So hopefully you guys have a great week. Any final thoughts, folks?
No, it was a good one today. Very not technical, but it was a lot of meat to chew on. Hope everybody enjoyed the meat and make sure you digest and get a good nap afterwards.
Okay, so that you just heard I can sleep today. That's great. All right. We'll see you guys next week. Take care and see you then.